Good morning. May surprise you that I have a fear of looking foolish. Check. Okay, so it is an honor to be here with you this morning. And no matter how awkward it may get, and I tell you it may get a little bit more awkward before the day is over. There's a really good chance of that, actually. I hope we'll be able to take a part of what I think should be a defining attribute for all of us here today, and that is courage. Too much coffee this morning. Thank you to April Dye, Dr. Dye, and the liberal arts people for inviting me here this morning. It is truly an honor to speak to you. I've had a lifelong fascination with people of courage. I love to hear their stories of struggle, redemption, loss, triumph, sacrifice, courage. As the youngest and shortest of three brothers, I am 5'9". Both of my other brothers are 6 foot and 6'3". I come from a basketball family. If you play that sport, you know that is not a good situation. I love stories of the little guy, the underdog, the little engine that could, the marginalized, the outcast, the underestimated, and the forgotten. And over the years, I've had the pleasure of collaborating to tell such stories. Dr. Dye said that I teach theater here, and so through the years, we've done a few of those. Diary of Anne Frank, Walk, Don't Ride, a celebration of diversity. The Miracle Worker, one of the shows I started out with to begin with, that tells the story of such people of courage. I've listened to many a great speech on courage and gathered a lot of information, but to be honest, I feel rather unqualified to give this talk this morning. See, I wouldn't describe myself as a particularly courageous individual. In fact, truth be told, I'm still trying to figure out why I submitted a topic and how I got here. This is a text that I sent my wife right after we left the meeting that said I was going to do it. So I submitted a chapel idea this morning for the Great Idea Lecture next fall, and I was approved. I'm speaking on courage. I want to throw up. She was kind enough to reply with, ha, 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 throw up. Perhaps this socially anxious introvert should have heeded my parents' advice, nothing good ever comes after midnight. They had different things in mind, but I would say that submitting a talk for Eagle Talks might be included in that now for me, as it was 1 o'clock when I finally sent my email. But we're here, I got all dressed up. So maybe we should dive in, starting with something I do know a little bit about, and that is fear. Actually, I know a lot of bit about fear. But judging by the general quality of public discourse, I don't think I'm alone in that. I see it in my news feed, in the Twitter wars and the Facebook rants, anger, hate speech, anxiety, egocentrism, and not just from millennials, although, as Dr. Haffiker said the other day, you guys get a bad rap, although you're really not part of that generation. Fear is manipulation, a weapon wielded to advance personal agenda, political or social ideology, oppress, victimize, and control. But I think fear is getting a bad rap. After all, there are healthy fears that can cause us to make good decisions, like getting out of the way of danger, right? Running from a burning building or something that's collapsing around you. Something like that area right there that fell in 1964. Sure going to be totally great today. Don't worry, they fixed it. New church. Fear maybe of wild animals, right? Don't pet bears in the wild. Or take selfies with them. Yeah. If you read the rest of the article, it says there's been an uptake in selfie deaths. Right? Don't take pictures with bears. It can help us appreciate the consequences of our actions and inactions. Fear that if you don't study for an exam, you may not pass. That's definitely a good one. I would heed that advice as well, especially if you were taking Dr. Hartsock's class. Every year he posts about the gospel tests. I've never taken it, but I think it's a doozy, and I always look forward to his posts. It can make us work hard as well. Fear of disappointing others, ourselves, our friends, It might make you study harder. It might make you rehearse longer. It might make you lift weights more. It might make you show up extra for that film session because you don't want to disappoint somebody for good reason. Fear can be a great motivator, but that's not typically the relationship most of us have with it. Author and creative advisor Todd Henry says that fear is the thief of dreams disguised as wisdom. Our fears can keep us from pursuing something of significance and then rationalizing our inaction. So we're going to start there with fear. Fear, I like acronyms. We're going to go with this. Fear of failure, that's a big one, I think. It's a good place to start, quite frankly. I'm not just going to fail. I'm going to fail anyway, so why bother? It's just, you're just. It's over before it gets started. Sometimes this rears its head as procrastination. I would fall into that category all too easily. I actually had planned a different opening for the very beginning. I was going to dress as Santa Claus for no apparent reason, but it may be my only chance to ever dress as Santa Claus in chapel, so I thought, why not take it? And then I texted a friend. I said, hey, do I dress as Santa Claus in chapel? He's a graduate. He said, Santa Claus? Yes, always yes. And then he texted back 2 minutes later and he said, unless you have your Braveheart costume, go that route. So thank you, Andrea. I went Braveheart instead. But at the last minute, I'm changing things. I have marks all over my page. I understand that. Some people say, why put off till tomorrow? What can be done today? I say, why not only put it off till tomorrow? What can be put off till the day after tomorrow? Procrastination is a self-sabotage. We choose to wait so as not to be able to accomplish something. Failure isn't my fault, right? If I'd had more time, if I'd had more money, if I'd had this, if I had that, if I'd asked that question sooner, or if they'd given me that information sooner, I might have been able to accomplish it. So it's not my fault. Self-sabotage. Fear of not being enough. Another one I have a pretty intimate relationship with as well. Oftentimes, this fear is tied to the perfectionist identity. Right? Our identity is tied up in something else. It's tied up in if we can create. It's tied up in how we are as a student, our grades, our performance, who we are as an athlete. We are striving after something we cannot attain to give us value. Author Anne Lamott calls perfectionism the voice of the oppressor. How incredibly harsh to think about it, but very true. We fear the after effects. What will this mean for the future? If I do this, if I step into this, what may happen? It may be disaster. And usually we assume it will be disaster. It's the fear of the uns, the uncomfortable, the unknown, the uncontrollable outcomes. And for those of us that like to control things and have it nice and neat and tidy, that may be the one that you deal with. And the last fear, not just because we're getting into R, but because it wraps it up nicely, is rejection. This is the not only do I not think that I'm enough, but others are going to think the same as well. I'm going to be found out. They're going to know. This is a fear tied to reputation, being more worried about how we are seen than how we actually are. I'm oftentimes more worried. Are they going to know that this is me? Than I am that actually is me. Fear can define us. It can control us. It can debilitate us. But just like fear is the thief of dreams, Todd Henry also describes it as the swell of opportunity. I like this image. The image of the big wave. We like to take our kids on vacation like so many families do. I have 3 children. They are 13 down to 8. And sometimes we'll go out in the water and we'll surf. And usually what that means is we get them on a pretty buoyant surfboard and they're laying down on their bellies and I give them a shove as the wave comes in so they don't have to paddle fast to keep up with it. And they'll catch the wave, and if we're lucky and we time it just right, they will ride that wave all the way to the beach. In fact, my youngest will ride it all the way onto the beach, usually. He weighs like 30 pounds. If we time it wrong, not so much. We're earned the dad parent of the year, and the kid, instead of catching the wave, does a faceplant and spread eagles down on the sand. And then I'm chasing to get him out of the water. It's all good. Right? The fear, the wave, the swell can be a great ride if we use it to our advantage, or it can be the thing that just wipes us out and wrecks us. So what's the difference in creating these kind of divergent outcomes? What does that look like? To me, that looks like courage. I said I like acronyms. We're going to stick with that avenue because, quite frankly, it's my speech and I can do what I want. Most of you are on your phones anyway, so it's all good. Courage begins with C, and so C for me is Christ. I can't talk about courage without talking about faith. It has to begin there. It is the foundation. Pastor from Atlanta, founder of Passion Conference, Louis Giegel, says, the opposite of fear isn't courage, it's faith. The opposite of fear isn't courage, it's faith. And I think he's right. Any moment of courage that I can ever truly claim is a moment where I said, I'm going to trust and I'm going to be faithful in spite of what I think is coming. 2 Timothy 1:7, for God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. And aren't all those three things components of courage? Power, love, self-control. Good courage. It is strength. It is strength through love. It is strength that is not just wielded recklessly, hubris, but intentionally with care. If our value and identity is in anything other than Christ, then struggling to be enough will have a lasting and devastating consequences. The O is for owning our stories. We have to own our stories. You have to own your story, which means opening up. Be vulnerable. I gave you an article by Brene Brown. Brene Brown, who I love. I just think she's fantastic and certainly has been very encouraging to me over the years. The author of that's the Star Wars blog post, has a wonderful TED Talk on this subject, and if you haven't already seen it, I would highly recommend you actually check it out, her TED Talk on vulnerability. If you get nothing out of this today, it's only 20 minutes, so it is really quick, and it's really good. In it, she shares her research as well as personal struggles with vulnerability and shame, and then makes the connection to courage. She says, our willingness to own and engage with our vulnerability determines the depth of our courage and the clarity of our purpose. The level to which we protect ourselves from being vulnerable is a measure of fear and disconnection. You must own your story, and you must own your fears, or your fears will in fact own you. And the way that you do that is not by holding on tighter. I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. The way we actually accomplish that is by releasing the grasp, letting go, being vulnerable, and saying, I can't do this, I need help. Help me do this. That might require you to apologize. Apologize if and when necessary. And part of owning our stories is taking responsibility for the damage we've caused, intentional or not, and seeking reconciliation. And that apology might need to actually go to yourself. You might need to apologize to yourself for not giving yourself the credit that you deserve. For all the bad words and mean words that you said to yourself. I have a really terrible tendency when I mess up and I'm working on something, I'll say, stupid Kyle. And I don't mean it in harm. Sociologists are going, you did what? I do. Devastating. It sticks with you. Apologize. The U is for understand. Understand your potential. I imagine you've heard this before. This quote before. Oh, go. There we go. One more time. What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. Ralph Waldo Emerson. I'm not a poet. I did study poetry in college for one semester. I was really excited. I think like a lot of humanities kinds of people in college, we always want to write poetry, bad poetry, as I've shared before. But I connect with this. Here's the thing, though what lies inside is not what lies inside of me and my strength. What lies inside is Christ in me. That's what lies inside. That's at the heart of that for me. Another way of saying a similar thing is Erwin McManus. He is a pastor, but he's also a creative. I first saw him speak at Story in Chicago at the time. It's a conference for creative people. Fuel for the creative class is what they call themselves. Brilliant people saying brilliant things. He says there's more courage in us than danger ahead of us. And I think that's something we have to hang on to. You have to ready yourself for the moments of opportunity. If we're going to understand our potential, we have to understand that we have to be ready. And that we are ready, whether we realize it or not. I don't think that courage is necessarily something you can always clearly map out, but I do think it is something you can prepare for. You can prepare for the moment when you might need to, in fact, say yes to that thing that you did not want to say yes to or you were not prepared to say yes to. A conversation, standing up, speaking out, staying might even be the situation. Les Brown says, the graveyard is the richest place on earth, because it is here that you will find all the hopes and dreams that were never fulfilled, the books that were never written, the songs that were never sung, the inventions that were never shared, the cures that were never discovered, all because someone was too afraid to take that first step, keep with the problem, or determined to carry out their dream. Let that sink in for a second. The graveyard is the richest place. Imagine all of the ideas that have been lost long before because somebody didn't share them. I would encourage you to pursue a God-sized dream. We need to reject rejection. I watched a lot of TED Talks when I started preparing for this because I thought I'm going to need some guidance on what this should look like, what it shouldn't look like. Hopefully I'm heading in the right direction. And so one of those speeches I watched was by a guy named Jia Jung. He, at the time, was at one point in time, when he was 30, he was a marketing manager for a Fortune 500 company. But he says he was unfulfilled. He was looking for what he needed to do next, and he just couldn't venture out. He was afraid of rejection. He was afraid of being told no. He was afraid of failing. And he happened upon something called rejection therapy. This gentleman that had created this concept. In fact, he created a game called Rejection Therapy. And the idea of it is that to get over rejection, you intentionally put yourself in places where you're going to be rejected. And so he said, I tried it. The first thing I did is, he said that in this game, you go and you ask somebody for $100. So he did. He went and asked somebody for $100. The way he describes it, the guy said no and kind of gave him a look like, are you crazy? And his response to that was to say, okay, I'm sorry, and he ran. And then he processed. He's like, oh, man, I wonder what would happen if I stayed in that. And so the next time he went out, he asked for a burger refill. I want all of you to try this at McDonald's over the next few days. A burger refill. He says, I gets his burger, he finishes eating his burger at whatever establishment he was at, and then he comes back, he says, hey, I'd like a burger refill. Can you imagine? Right? Person behind the counter, some 14-year-old kid. Do we do that? I don't think we do that. Would you consider it? I'll tell my manager. Okay. They don't do burger refills. He spent some time as a Starbucks greeter. Asked the guy at Starbucks, hey, can I be a greeter? And the guy was like, what? I know this is crazy. And as soon as he said that, I know this is crazy, the guy was like, yeah, sure, why not? So he spent an hour as a Starbucks greeter, kind of like the Walmart greeter, he says. He even makes a comment about giving them the Walmart experience at Starbucks. I kind of actually stumbled on this myself long before I heard the talk. Back in March, a friend of mine celebrated his 40th birthday. I'm kind of at that age. And I went into Lowe's like I do on a lot of days because I'm constantly building sets. And as I went in there, I thought, it would be really great if I could find 40 people to sing happy birthday to him on his birthday. That's not what I do. I'm a theater person, but that is not what I do. I tend to be on the back side of things. I do not like to be out front. But I thought, what? This could be an adventure. And it was scary to begin with. And then I asked, my first ask, I said, this is Robin. I said, Robin, would you be willing to sing happy birthday to somebody you don't know? And she was like, I don't sing. I said, that's okay. It doesn't have to be great. He doesn't sing well either. It'll be great for him, right? I think he's here today. Just kidding. Sing beautifully. And then after just a little bit of sticking to it, she finally said yes. So this is, oops, wrong one. This is Robin.
To you, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ben. Happy birthday to you. 3 down, 37 to go. Happy birthday.
Right? It was a fun experience in that moment. Then I went to Walmart. Great people at Walmart. I was excited. I was encouraged. I walk up to the first guy I see. He's got tattoos all up his arms. I really like tattoos. I'm never going to get one, but I think they are pretty cool. That didn't scare me. I was like, this guy, he's going to be totally in. I think he thought I was going to ask him for money. He muttered something to me that I'm pretty sure I can't say in chapel. And I was defeated right away. I did not give up entirely. I came back to campus, and because I'm a faculty member and I have students that are in the performing arts, I thought, what? I've got a wealth of students that I'm going to use. That's what they're here for. Finally. I'm just kidding, totally. And so I found one in the box office. We were set to open a show that day, opening night. And Alec was kind enough not only to do it the first time, but to allow me to share this with you this morning.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ben.
I love how his head is in the ball. If you've ever seen Truman Show, when he's walking up to the mirror and he's like...
That was kind of like he was in outer space, wearing his suit helmet with that thing around him. Happy birthday, we're almost there. We are at, we're not almost there. We are at 31 left to go. I should have thought about how old you are before I started this program.
Yeah, I really should have thought about how many 40 people was before I got started on that journey. I began to be like, hey, I'm going to sing with everybody, and I'll count as one all the time, right? One more, I actually went to Rick's copies to get some copies that I needed for that day. And so I asked him. Some people were willing to add even a little bit more than I expected. Rick.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Ben. You're 40.
Right?
That even had musicianship with it.
It did have
We're getting
musicianship.
closer.
I was surprised at what I found. I was inspired by what I found. I was amazed that people were willing to actually open up and do some of these things for me. Just because I asked and because I stayed there. It's interesting, when I went to do this, I kind of put this on the shelf, and then I got ready to give this talk, and I was like, I can't put these things on without asking people. And so I went looking for Robin. I went back to Lowe's because that's where she was. And she wasn't working that day. I waited till yesterday because, again, I procrastinate, and it was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and she always works in the morning. And I said, I think half-heartedly thinking, you know what? If I get in there and she's not there, I got my out. Won't have to ask anymore. And then suddenly I was like, well, that just completely ruins the illustration. So then I found somebody else, the manager, and said, hey, I didn't even know her name at the time. I was like, I don't know who this is. I was in the picture with her, so it made things a little easier. I said, I don't know who this is, but I'm trying to find her. And she did look at me like, that is not a good idea. I said, no, really? Then I showed her the video. I was like, we sang together months ago, and I want her to be able to share her video this morning. Would you do that? And so she actually called her. And then she didn't get the right she didn't get the message. She wasn't there. Robin was there. So she got her cell phone number, and then she called her cell phone. And she was like, I'm not taking no for an answer either. And suddenly, I made a new friend, Dawn. It's a terrible picture. Dawn didn't want her picture taken either. At first, I was like, hey, will you take a picture of me? Because I can't just talk about you. I really want people to see you so that they can thank you as well when they come in. She's like, no, I don't take pictures. It's like, I don't either. Take a picture with me. And she was like, okay. Which reminds me, can I show you a picture of my dogs? No, that's what I need. No, right? Rejection. But I did hear a few yeses, so you know what? I'm going to show you my dogs anyways. That's my dog. That's both my dogs, back to back on the couch where I should be. The big one, in particular, likes to sit on my lap on the couch. He has no concept that he weighs 95 pounds. Part of this game, one of the cards in his game is show somebody a picture of your cat. I don't have cats. Not a fan. Although I do love that video of the cat, the one the guy's like on the fridge, and he opens the door just long enough to swat his friend in the face and then ducks back in. You haven't seen that? It's awesome. One of my favorites. Accept momentary failure. We must be willing to accept momentary failure because failure truly is a part of the process. Failure is a part of growth. Failure is a part of learning. Henry Ford, I found this one time on that one of my stories trips to Chicago when I was walking around a building and I saw this and I thought, yes, fear. I was in one of those moments, especially of fear. And it says, one who fears the future fears failure. He limits his activities. If you are afraid of what's going to come, you are limiting what's going to happen for you and potentially for others. You may have also heard Edison's quote that when he was trying to figure out how to make the light bulb work, I have not failed. I just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. I like looking for ways that don't work. You have to intentionally challenge yourself in a way that may go terribly wrong. A healthy challenge. Be smart about it. Oh, failure is the mother of success. I forgot I added in there. I found a fortune cookie thing too in my wallet that I keep. Failure is the mother of success. I love that. Be smart about your attempts. Again, kind of a blurry picture, but I think you get the idea. This is not me and my two brothers, by the way, although we did do something like this on more than one occasion. Usually we laid sideways at least. It was the 80s, we survived. Be willing to step out and try daring things. The G is gather wise counsel. Gather wise counsel. This might be your people, your peeps, your boys, your sisters, your gang. Your gang in terms of like West Side Story kind of gang, like they start dancing right away, there's no real violence. That kind of gang. Your tribe, or as Shakespeare puts it much more eloquently in Henry V. And there's a version of this in The Renaissance Man, a movie I really love too. I think it might be from the 80s. It's an old film. You appreciate that. It's an old film in the 80s, right? The speech is they're preparing for battle. And he says, we would not die in that man's company that fears his fellowship to die with us. This day is called the Feast of Crispian, which, by the way, October 25th, today's the day. Coincidence? Maybe. He that outlives this day and comes safely home will stand a tiptoe when this day is named. He will be able to raise his chest and rouse him at the name of Crispian. He that shall live this day and see old age will yearly on the vigil feast his neighbors and say, tomorrow is St. Crispian. Then will he strip his sleeve and show his scars. And say, these wounds I had on Crispian's day. Old men forget, yet all shall be forgot. But he'll remember with advantages what feats he had this day. Then shall our names familiar in this mouth as household words. Harry the King, Bedford and Exeter, Warwick and Talbot, Salisbury and Gloucester. You might have names that are a little bit more familiar to you. The names of your friends, your loved ones. My wife's sitting right there. Be in their flowing cups freshly remembered. This story shall that good men teach his son. And Crispian shall ne'er go by from this day to the end of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. Band of brothers. Some of you athletes may have heard that before. You may have seen the movie, The Band of Brothers, the television series, The Band of Brothers. That's where it actually comes from. Shakespeare said a lot of things that we use today. We appreciate that. We understand it. We connect to it. For he today that sheds blood with me shall be my brother. Be he ne'er so vile, this day shall gentle his condition. And gentlemen in England, now abed, those that are not here, shall think themselves accursed they were not here. Surround yourself with people that will walk through your battles with you, that will speak truth, all of it, not just what's easy. There are people that will massage the truth, that tell you what you like to hear instead of what you need to hear. I do theater, and after every show, everybody's like, oh, you guys are awesome, you should be on Broadway. Even when I was like in 10th grade, no. We know better. Likewise, there are those that will tear you apart just because they can. Look for people that will love you in spite of the fact that you are broken and in spite of the fact that you are going to mess up. Find those that will love you through your pain and let you love them through theirs. That won't give up on you and won't let go. Those are the kind of people you should surround yourself with, that you should seek out. Honest friendships. Messy, beautiful friendships, as Christine Hoover describes them. Exposing others to our brokenness and accepting the fact that we have messed up and living alongside them to know the extent of our failure is incredibly difficult. But the fact of the matter is the only way to truly feel alive and to live truly free. Last one is E, engage. Engage in the world around you. The world beyond you. We live in troubled times. Dr. Bibb spoke here, I think a couple weeks ago, and talked about fear as well. There's plenty that needs to be done. Engage in the process, in conversations. The other article I asked you to read was the introduction to what's called Inciting Incidents. It's a book I love. It's a book I read with one of my classes. And if you haven't read that little blurb, I really would say take 3 minutes and read it. It's worth it, I think, obviously. The rest of the book is really phenomenal as well. In it, there's 6 people that share their stories, their vulnerable stories of growth and change, what we call inciting incident, that moment in their life when something changed. And usually that is a matter of, I got to the end of my rope, I could take it no more, I could not watch this injustice no longer, I could not be silent anymore. Somebody had to do something, and it had to be me, for others or for myself. Most of you are here probably because you're in LA 101 and so you're a freshman in college, which means you're around 18 years of age. And I would say at this stage, you still have probably an inciting incident. Something that in your life has affected you in such a way that has changed the way you think and has changed the way you see the world. It may not seem like a gift and it may not seem like a blessing, but it probably is just that. That is your way to engage the world. And there might be somebody that needs to hear your story so that they can tell their story. My charge to you is simple. My questions that I said I want you to look at and think over. Write down that thing that is stirring inside you, aching for you to be courageous. We all have them. We tend to push them aside. We tend to be like, I don't think so. Surely that's not what you mean. That is exactly what I mean. Write it down. Write it down and keep it as a reminder. I got this at one of the story conferences years ago. It actually at one point in time had cotton candy in it. It was really awesome. They give great gifts, fun stuff. Cotton candy, you can't see what it says, but it says, I dare you. I keep it tacked on my wall because I need a reminder all too often. Matt Cheney talked about Brad Montague, maybe showed a clip. I'm trying to remember if we watched it beforehand or if he showed it in the speech or not, but I think we watched it. If you don't know Brad Montague, he's the one that created Kid President, a series of posts on YouTube, posts that he did with his brother-in-law. At the end of one of his speeches at Story, he says, the future is not written for us, but by us. So rewrite the future, reimagine the future. I dare you to.